Hello watercolor artists, and welcome to my channel. I'm Laurel Hart, and this is a YouTube channel on painting in an impressionistic style in watercolor. Sometimes I don't quite meet the mark, but most of the time things are loose and impressionistic, which is what I strive for. And if you're on this channel, I think that's what you're looking for as well. The subject today that I would like to talk about is what I call melted figures. In the well-known movie The Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West becomes a melted figure, but not in a good way, when Dorothy throws a bucket of water on her. In this case, it caused the death of this bad witch, but when we melt figures with water in watercolor, it actually enlivens them, in my view. I'd like to show you a few examples of what I mean. One artist who is particularly good at this technique is Hazel Sowen, and I think I have maybe shared some things of hers with you before. This little book, Learn to Paint People Quickly, is a really valuable little resource that I turn to often, and I really like this and recommend it. She is a master at painting melted figures. This little figure right here, I think is really a perfect example as to what I am talking about, where this figure has no really solid hard breaks in it. It's just a complete melting of color all the way from top to bottom. This one is more detailed, but this is absolutely one of my very favorite examples of this Western cowboy. If you look here how she has blended the face right into the shirt and down into the arms, and then the cowboy kind of melts right into the horse as well. And there's just very, very little hard edge, and it's not necessary for putting across the idea of this figure. And I just love how fluid it is, how much movement it has to it, and how simple it is, and how little detail she's able to get away with painting this way. So again, this is a great little resource tool for painting people in a very loose manner. In my book, Putting People in Your Paintings, there's a page where I'm demonstrating this idea of these melted figures where, again, just starting at the top here with the paintbrush and then moving down to the bottom of the figure, all kind of in one go. You just get this beautiful continuation of color where it's not broken up into bits and pieces of hard edges and delineation in any place really. And this is one other example here of a figure that I did in this demo in my book, where again I start at the top and I pull that paint bead right down into the flesh color, and it leaves this wet bead at the bottom. I come back in and pick it up with more color and just continue on down, jumping over the whites of the figure and coming all the way to the bottom. So the tool, besides a lot of water, is using a board that's on an angle, which I generally paint that way. There's a lot of people that paint in watercolor that don't really use a slanted board, but for me, with the techniques that I like to use, it's very important because the water is going to start being pulled down by the gravity on this tilt. And so that's a really important part of this technique of making the figures look like they melt. And then you get this very beautiful softness as you do this, where everything has a soft edge to it. And to me, it's more like the way the human eye sees. We don't see everything in sharp focus. And a lot of beginning or lesser experienced painters don't understand that. And everything that they paint has a break or a hard edge to it. And it just doesn't look real. It doesn't read like we see things with the human eye. So I'm going to start here with this subject. I have a kind of a little cowgirl that I'm going to be painting. And I'm going to try to demonstrate this where I will start at the top and try to make this a continuous bleeding the bead all the way down to the bottom of the figure. There will be some places where I'll maybe go out into the background or whatever, but for the most part, I'm just going to focus mostly on getting a really loose figure here. So I'm starting off with a number, I think I'll start with a number 10 brush. This is my King Art Premium Original Gold brush. The series is 9020-10. And it's really a good flexible brush, and I really love this brand. I'm going to start out then with getting my brush full of a lot of water. And I'm not necessarily this time going to start out with a triad. I'm going to kind of select my colors as I go. And I'm going to start out with this a warm reflective color under her hat. And try to keep that very watery. And you can see that bead that's forming at the bottom here. I'm going to come back into that with the hair color, letting that touch back into the wet paint just a little bit. And that's going to bleed back into her hat. I want to also warm up the color of that hat just a little bit with a little more yellow to it. And that way I can smooth out that hair just a little too. And then coming right down into her face, I'm going to let a little of this come out into the background. And even that gives a soft edge there. As I wash that away. But just keeping it a very, very light wash out here in the background. Okay, and then I'm going to come right into her face. Get myself a good skin color. And she is, her face is in shadow because of that brim of her hat. So I'm going to keep it almost a sienna color here. Actually, it is a sienna color. And I am just going to keep that coming down, letting it bleed back into her hair. I'm going to touch back up into here. I want that a little bit darker under there. But see how that keeps everything really nicely diffused and easy for the eye to have a pathway, an unbroken pathway through that figure's face and down into the dress here. I'm going to pick up right where I left off there, and I'm going to do this, her shirt, in a bit of a reverse as to what it is in the photo. What I'm saying is the background's going to be pink or kind of a peach color, while I'll just pull out some of the lights on it. Gonna strengthen this down in here too. But my paint is still wet down here, so it's leaving that as a soft edge. And then I think I will come back in with a little bit of these flowers on her shirt. They're not as pink as I'm making them, but that's okay. And then if her face is still wet up here, I'm going to try to pull a little edge of that out. Yeah, I can. With a paper towel here. And I'll come in and fix that a little better later, but at least I want to get a little bit of that light on the side of her face. Okay. Sometimes you can just get your brush really dry and pull that out too. Because there will be a highlight on her nose there. Yeah, that's going to be okay there. It looks funny right now, but I'll come back in and paint over that a little bit. And possibly I'll put her eyes in too while this is still a little bit fuzzy. I don't think I want those quite that dark. It seems to me that kind of a common mistake is painting the features too dark to where they really don't look natural. Okay. And then I want to keep coming down here where that's still wet a little bit. And still kind of that same color. And the rope is got a little more gray to it. I know that that nose is really looking bad right now, but I promise I will fix that. Okay, so I want to put a few more roses here on this sweater, or I'm not sure if it's a sweater or blouse, just what it is, but okay. Then I'm gonna come over in here with a little bit of gray on this fold of the blanket, and get her hand in there. Okay, and her, I guess this is part of her other hand over here. Yeah, right under the rope. I guess it's actually the sleeve of her sweater. Okay, then her skirt is a little bit of a warmer color. But see how I'm just going right over that rope as if it's transparent pretty much. And I can take some of this color back out here to make that look like it's in the sun a little bit, in the sunlight. And then while this part is still wet, there's kind of a deeper shadow down in here. Then I want to pull that right down into her boots. And it's amazing how much painting I feel like I do with my paper towel, pulling out lights and blending stuff. She's got some tucks on the skirt of her, on the ruffle of her skirt, I guess is what it is. So I'm going to put those in there, and they can just kind of soften back in. And I'm going to put just a little indication that there is a shadow under her sweater. And I do want to put in the shadow between her feet here to anchor her down a little bit. The other thing that is really helpful about this method of painting is that it goes faster. It goes pretty fast if you just kind of loosen up and let it go. Let yourself go with it. Okay, I want to come back up in here and put in some of the folds on these blankets. Got a shadow under her hand and on that kind of underneath her arm there. So I am breaking up the figure a little bit, but because it's got that soft undercolor, there is something about it that does not allow it to look hard or fake. I don't know kind of how to explain that. And there's kind of one lower row of the rope here. I maybe don't want that quite so strong. That's kind of a soft color on the blanket. her quilt or whatever it is that she's holding. And that's the thing, you know, if I just describe this with these little patterns of shade, it's going to look more real than if I try to describe it with drawing. If that makes sense. I hope that does. I kind of have a rule to describe things using using the shadow and light pattern than drawing it. I'm gonna pull out some of that light right there. And then there's kind of some dark stuff under here. And under here is in shadow. I don't want to cover up all the whites on that little quilt pattern. You can kind of tell that it's a quilt. And this should have been left a lot lighter here. So I'll pull that out. This little light right there. This is a little darker under here, too. I'm just still describing the folds of her skirt there. And there's kind of a dark shadow, a cast shadow from her hand here. inside of that fold right here is a lot darker than I've got it, and under here too. Okay, then I'll do a little bit of detail here to just show that there are some wrinkles in her sleeve, and a little bit of a shadow on the bottom there. Working on this Winsor Newton paper is so forgiving. It's just, I just love the give that it has for wiping stuff out and lifting. It's really a great paper for that. Okay. I wasn't really sure if I wanted to do any background in here, but I think maybe I will put a, not necessarily a detailed background, but just kind of some color in here to set off that white on the top of her hat. And I'm feeling like this is kind of muted color, so I don't want to do those greens too terribly bright. So I'm going to kind of dull back my, that was sap green, and I'm adding the burnt sienna, which is very red, so it neutralizes it a lot. Okay. And see where that hat is not wet. That color just follows right around it. Cool, huh? And I don't have to describe everything that's out here, but you can believe that it's trees and bushes and stuff. At least I think you can, I hope. And then same thing over here. I don't know if this is still wet over here, but okay. And then this will kind of explain the blanket here a little better. You can kind of tell that she's holding that. But I think that neutral green is more in harmony with the color scheme that I've got going here. And then I can put even a little bit of a darker green in there while this is wet, so I get a little bit of dimension out here in the forest or whatever's back there behind her. Okay. Now, I know you were all worried about her face. I am too. But it's got to be a little bit darker than what I've got it here, as it is should be in shadow. But I'm going to leave these lights. Don't want that much for her. And usually ears are pretty bright red. The appendages on our body, like fingers and things that stick out like that, are generally pretty bright. Okay, I am going to try to take out a little bit of her nose now. But I don't want to over-describe this. And maybe you'll think, oh, she just doesn't know how to draw it. But it's actually, I don't want to overemphasize her face. And this should be a little softer edge here on that light. So I'm still going to try to work a little bit of light out of the area where the light is on her nose. These last darks, final darks, are really dark, but they're important to describe things, but I don't want to over-describe it. I still want this figure to be very fluid. Okay, I think I need to widen that sleeve on her sweater just a little bit. I maybe got that dark just a little too dark. So I want to be careful that I don't start outlining everything and undo what I wanted to keep very loose and soft-edged. I'm going to come back onto her, get in some of this shadow under the sleeve here. And that's kind of a warmer shadow. Don't let me go too far with this. So sometimes in a background, we often do more than we need. And I'm notorious for that. But sometimes it's very refreshing when there's just kind of a little bit of description around a figure. That's still a little bit wet to be able to put the corners of her mouth in yet. And sometimes it's nice to do the reverse, to pull out rather than put in color. That gives it a nice variety. I still think there's a little bit more of dark in between the rope here. It's still just a little darker under her arm here. That shadow is a bit darker there. Okay, I think that helped. I'm gonna do something I didn't want to do. I'm gonna add a little bit more oomph to her hair. And it'll still be okay because I've left that wet, so it'll still blend. So if I still wet that, that'll still blend in and smooth out. Okay, I'm just about done here, I think. So figures are not that scary to do if you paint them as if they're just bits and pieces of shadow and light. And you won't really go wrong. And things will be a lot more believable. Okay, I just need to finalize that face. Can you tell I'm not looking forward to going back in there? I think I'm going to give it one more wash. And I may not need to do any more detail if I do that. It's an old trick. The eye won't really be able to tell what's under there, but it kind of will fill it in for you. And now it's not that, it's not that, I don't know, bothersome. Oh, that's too dark. It's not that bothersome that I haven't done a detailed mouth. At least I don't think. Your brain is telling you that it's there. Okay, and then just, yeah, a little bit more flesh color on the hand there. So remember that trick if you're sometimes not having a lot of success with the face. if it's in shadow like that, darken it. And you can sometimes get by without having to go back in. Okay. I'm just putting in some very, very little bit of really dark darks to set a few things off here. That may be a little too dark there. For some reason, like I said, even though you tighten this back up, with that under softness, it forgives it and keeps it looking I don't know, more real. Okay, I still want a little bit of some punches of darker green out here. Not a lot, but a little bit. So I think I'm gonna quit about now. I think this gives you a pretty good idea of what I mean by these melted figures and the soft result that you can get by trying to keep everything moving and blending together as you paint a figure. So thank you for joining me today, and I will see you in our next segment. Goodbye.